Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the last mini-med presentation for this semester. Today, we will talk about a very familiar word, a very familiar companion to the medical sector. Yes, you know it. It is stress. I think we all said stress, the word stress at least once last week. So, in this presentation, we will talk about what is stress, how to deal with stress most importantly, and what is the different types for stress. So, we brought in a very special guest to our hearts. He's a psychiatrist consultant from King Fahd Medical City. He is certified from the Board of American Neurology and Psychiatry. And he has many publications and researches in the areas of cognition and depression. So, and all of that aside, he is our mentor. He was our doctor. He gave us the foundation in psychiatry, in neurology block. So, please welcome with me, Dr. Ali Garatli.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction, and I'm always very happy to be here. I know most of you, so it's not very stranger to be here, and I'm very proud to be part of your team and try to help you today in understanding the stress, and I try to make it more for doctors and medical students, because all of this information we can talk today is very relevant to you in your life. So let's start. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So today's topic will be about stress. As you know, stress is part of your life, part of my life. It has been with me for many years. I remember one time when I was resident in Tennessee, and my teacher used to tell us that you think when you finish residency, your life will be easy and less stressful. He said, forget that. Your life will be much more stressful when you graduate. So the good news is, or the bad news, I don't know, is something you're going to get used to it in the future, because it's not going to get any better in the future. Lakin, hopefully you will be able to cope with it and know how to diagnose it and know how to deal with it in the future. So stress is going to be there. Mental traffic in Riyadh, there is always, but the good thing is you're going to know how to deal with it. So stress is your body autonomic response or automatic response to physical or mental demand. So when we are stressed, that means we have too much and too little time, and we have difficulty coping with it. And as you remember, when I did medical school long time ago, I'm not going to tell you when, because I don't want you to know my age, but in our time there was only this two. In your time there is also more, like we were only two-wheel drive, and now you are four-wheel drive. You have this and this. In my time when I was in medical school, we never had these two at all. So a lot of things you need to be dealing with. How you can tell that somebody is stressed? One of the physical symptoms you see is they come usually with very vague symptoms. So a lot of them will come with the GI, headache, back pain, fatigue. All of this is because you are stressing yourself out. You are activating your parasympathetic tone and sympathetic tone at the same time, and you are unable mentally to cope with it. So you will have time or difficult time coping with too much knowledge, too much exam, too much stress, that you are really unable to cope in most of these situations. When we talk about the brain, as you know, I like to talk about the brain, and it starts here. This is our troublemaker. We call it the amygdala, and we talk about it, if you remember, in the foundation a lot. So the amygdala is like your troublemaker in the brain. This is where the source of all of our trouble in life is the amygdala. The amygdala usually communicate with the frontal lobe and the limbic system here in the hypothalamus. It's part of the limbic system, but when it see any danger, like amygdala's role is like جهاز الأمن, it's security forces of the brain. It's always on the look for any trouble. Whenever it sees any trouble, it will activate what we call the HPA axis, and we start secreting some kind of hormone called stress hormone. And this stress hormone is designed to save you. So for example, when a lion attacks you or when a snake wanna eat you, this hormone will make you run away. So these are meant to be there for a short period of time. So when God put this here, He said, we're gonna give you this to save you. So it's just for a short period of time. The problem when you are stressed out, you just keep having those for a long time. So they are meant to be like 10, 20 minutes. We keep them running in our system for hours and hours and hours. And that would cause all of the sign of anxiety and stress. So these hormones are cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are the same. So basically they are cortisol and norepinephrine, which are secreted from two places. These called adrenal gland, which secrete cortisol and norepinephrine, and there is a place here, if you remember, in the brainstem called locus coeruleus, which also secrete norepinephrine. So this is our beautiful stress hormone. This is how they look like. I'm just kidding here. So this is norepinephrine, adrenaline, and cortisol. Adrenaline is norepinephrine or epinephrine, so this is where we secrete them from. So let's start with the cortisol. Cortisol is one of the hormones that is supposed to have high level of it in the morning. So when you wake up in the morning, you have very high level of cortisol. Cortisol's role is to prepare you for the day. So when you wake up at 6 o'clock and you check your blood sugar is high. Why? Because cortisol will raise your blood sugar. So you want sugar, you want cortisol, you want norepinephrine to start your day and go on with your day. Throughout the day, cortisol will subside slowly. And this is everybody supposed to have this. This is normal. We call a cortisol variation of the diurnal variation. In anxiety and stress, the problem is the cortisol is high all the time. So in the morning and at night, and that's why you cannot go to sleep well. Because when you have a high cortisol, you cannot sleep well. Because sleep needs your cortisol to be low. Your norepinephrine has to be low. Because these are hormones that wake you up. So when you have trouble with the sleep, when you are sweating at night, when you are worried about something, that means your cortisol and norepinephrine are not having this, what you call diurnal variation. So what happens is when you have too much cortisol, when you have anxiety and stress, most patients develop too much cortisol secreting hormone, ACTH and CRH, which is secreted from the hypothalamus. So the difference between normal guy and guy with anxiety, depression, or stress, they have too much of the ACTH. When you have too much of ACTH, that means you have too much cortisol. And you look at most patients who are anxious and stressed out, you see their face is like the moon face. You see their face getting round like the moon face. Why? That's all sign of depression, anxiety, and stress. Because it's too much cortisol and norepinephrine. So what happened is, in most cases, we should be either in the parasympathetic tone or the sympathetic tone. We always have to be in the balance, not too much here and not too much here. You don't want to be too much relaxed because this is not good for you. And you don't want to be too much like you are run out by a snake. So most patients with the stress, they will have too much of cortisol, norepinephrine, and you are always in the fight or flight. What happens if you have too much cortisol for a long time? Your blood sugar is gonna go high. So you start stress at age 20, 30, at age 40 and 50 you have diabetes. You are stressed at age 20, 30 and at 50 you have hypertension. Why? Because too much norepinephrine, too much cortisol is gonna cause your blood sugar to go high. Too much norepinephrine is gonna make your blood pressure high. So we call that hypertension and diabetes. Ask any 50 years old here in the Kingdom or in America, they will tell you most of these patients in their 50s, they have diabetes and hypertension, which is part of the game in our life. So this would participate heart attack, heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. It's mainly related to this stress situation here. And as you know, when you have too much norepinephrine, the platelet in the arteries will accumulate here, and then after many years you will have what we call atherosclerosis, and your blood vessels will become hardened, and you put yourself at risk of stroke and heart attack because your blood vessels in the heart and in the brain become very stiff, so they will break out at any time. What is the problem if we don't treat them? So chronic activation of the hypothalamus and the amygdala and the adrenal gland, in the long run, if you don't know how to switch it off, what's going to happen if you don't know how to switch that cortisol level off? You're going to be at risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, myocardial infarction, or sudden death, atherosclerosis, and ischemia. So all of this illness is done or studied. In this study showed that high level of stress cause high level of cortisol, high level of adrenal increase, and that would cause this illness. So how we can deal with it? Now, it doesn't. Most stress people will be able to survive if they know how to do it. How I can do and deal with my stress? How I can not or prevent that from happening to me? The message is really here. In these, what we call the frontal lobe, PFC stands for prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the best gift that God gave us. So the troublemaker, we said, is the amygdala. The amygdala is our troublemaker. This is what makes you stress. Like you have exam, oh, you are stressed out. You have a call from Yaqeen or Reem Masood, and you are stressed out. So the way to deal with it is PFC. PFC has a hotline with the amygdala. So the amygdala has connection with the PFC. If you have good PFC, then your amygdala are in check. It will not cause any trouble. Why? Because it's supposed to be controlled by the frontal lobe. So we call anxiety and stress and depression, the new definition of those illnesses is the inability of the frontal lobe to control the limbic system. So you become stressful and depressed and anxious when your frontal lobe was supposed to control this is unable to do that. So that is the new definition. Because if you have a good frontal lobe, no matter how much stress you have in life, you still can be able to prevent the amygdala from starting this cascade of increased depression and anxiety. So always you have to train your frontal lobe how to control your amygdala. Because if you leave it to the amygdala, you're going to be always tense. So the patient will come to you and say, I feel mashdood. Mashdood, tense. Dik al-sadr. This is what they say. I cannot enjoy anything. That means your amygdala is taking over your frontal cortex. That means your frontal lobe is unable to get this amygdala and check out. So this is what happened. If your stress hormone is secreted from here and your frontal lobe cannot control them, then the frontal lobe will start having damage because too much norepinephrine and too much acetylcholine and too much cortisol will weaken the connection on the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe needs norepinephrine and need cortisol to function well. But he needs a little amount, not too much and not too little. Like if you don't have enough norepinephrine here, you will feel sluggish and tired and you cannot concentrate. We call that ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, where the patient does not have any norepinephrine or dopamine in the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is not functioning. So you cannot pass exam, you cannot pass anything because you don't have enough of these. Okay, when you have way too much of them, the connection in the frontal lobe weaken and the frontal lobe become unable to do anything. So we need the right amount of these substances. Now, each one of you has different threshold. So I myself like it to be a little bit high because I cannot function unless it's too high. Some people need very little to make it work. So each one have his own, what we call homeostasis of these hormones. So that's why, if you remember, I mentioned this many years ago for you. I said stress makes you stupid. Why stress makes you stupid? Because remember we have, if you remember this from the old, why people under fear and under anxiety cannot function well. Like you see a student, and I see many of you like this, very smart, study very well. He can pass any exam. He is study the material very well, and he's supposed to have A+. He goes to the exam and he fails. Many cases. I see almost every day. And in Alfaisal, I saw at least 30 students with this same complaint. He is very smart, he is very good, he can do very well, but in the exam, his thinking is jammed and he failed the exam. Why? So what happened is, you remember we have two brains here. We have the limbic brain or the automatic brain, the emotional brain, and we have the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe, we say, is the thinking brain, the brain that makes you think and pass exam. This has nothing to do with exam. Here is with love and emotion. Here is passing the exam. So when you are stressed out like here, then the limbic system will hijack the thinking brain. So the thinking brain now is obsolete. The patient will tell you, I feel like stuck. Feel stuck is like I don't have any ability to think. I have any ability to, unable to pass an exam because my frontal lobe is being hijacked. So you see a student who is IQ 200 and he failed in the exam. And you have one guy who is IQ is 80 and he can pass the exam. We call that the emotional intelligence, where they found out that most people who are successful in life are not the people who had A+. No. Not are the people who were the first on their class. No. The people who are average intelligent, but they don't let the limbic system during stress hijack your ability to prevent limbic system from hijacking your thinking brain is going to define how successful you are. So most successful people are not the one who had very high IQ here. No, the people who had normal or a little bit above normal, but the limbic system will not be able to hijack their frontal lobe. Because all of us gonna face stress in life. There is no one who is gonna face stress in his life. So successful people is the one who were able to prevent that from happening. Same thing happened when you are in love. When you are in love, because you love your girl too much, it will hijack your brain and you don't see anything wrong with her. Why? Because the limbic system will hijack your brain. That's why Gibran used to say, لا تناقشني بشخص أراه بعيني أراه بقلبي وتراه بعينيك. Don't ask me about a person I see in my heart and you see in your frontal lobe. And that's part of life. So always the best thing for you as a medical student is this. Train how to keep your PFC free. Not let this hijack this. And this is going to define how successful you are. So patients who are what you call in Arabic halim, patients who will not get angry easily, those are the people who are going to do very well in life. Is going to do very well in exams, is going to do very well in everything. Why? Because the limbic system during stress will always try to hijack here. So you're going to be in the future a lady, you're going to be having kids, stress at work, stress with husband, stress with your in-law, and all of that is going to try to hijack your frontal lobe. So what you need to do is you're going to train to keep this free. We call that repression. Repression is when you use a defense mechanism that you repress all of this emotion from coming here. So even I am very, very stressed out, problem at home, for example, la samhallah, problem with the husband, problem with everybody, but I still can see patient and do a very good job and read an article and do research. So this is the best advice for you here in the next 20 years, how to train your PFC to be free. Because if you are too much stressed and you cannot handle it, you're gonna put yourself in what we call survival mode. Survival mode is, remember we said when you are fight or flight, you are either gonna fight this guy or get away from him. Some people might get the third option, which is just become careless. We call that giving up, or just, I don't want to do anything, everything, I'm gonna go with the flow. I don't want to do anything. So you start being, isolated. You have a lot of fear. You feel fatigue and tired. This is a sign of severe stress, but you are not trying to do anything about it. Just giving up. And you see a lot of patients who call the survival mode. That means I'm going to go with the flow. Leave it to God, leave it to everybody. I don't want to deal with it. You don't want to be like this. But as we said, stress is not all bad, because you as a medical student, if you don't get stressed out, you're not going to be able to pass any exam. I think they do it on purpose to make you stress out a little bit, because this will make your frontal lobe function very well. So stress is a normal, adaptive behavior, and this is what keeps you alive. This is what if you are not stressed the night before the exam, you're not going to pass the exam. But the problem is when we call it abnormal, when it starts to interfere with your life. It means here, I can explain it here. So here, you're not going to be able to pass any exam. Here also, your brain is jammed, stuck. They found most neurosurgeons, for example, they do the best when they are here in the highest level of stress. So each one has one of these. I like it here, but a lot of people will not be able to function very well unless you stress them to the max, where you really get the best out of their achievement. I remember one of the neurosurgeon, he was doing surgery to the point where he was so stressed out, the ceiling fell off, there was a fire, and he didn't even notice it, because he was too much involved in this. And he said, this is the best time where I can feel myself and I can feel my energy is the best here. So this is the life of my friend. He used to be my friend in the clinic, and I named him Dr. Z. Of course, his real name is not Dr. Z, but we named him Dr. Z. And this is the daily life of you is going to be after many years from now, 2, 3, 4 years, when you become a graduate and then you do your residency and become a doctor. You're going to have a busy clinic. You're going to have your wife calling, your kids, your paperwork, requirement of research, requirement of paperwork. This is the daily life of this. So how we can deal with it in the future? Because this is going to happen to you. It happened to me in 2008, and I was able to escape from it. The problem is we mentioned about the 2 or 3 bad hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, all of that. They are not bad. Too much of them is bad. Too little is good. And we have the good hormones, the good neurotransmitter. Dopamine is the reward hormone. So when you make $200,000 a year, you're going to be having plenty of dopamine. When you get married to a beautiful wife, you're going to have plenty of dopamine. Endorphin is the same thing happen after you have too much dopamine, then endorphin will come later and you're going to feel relaxed and happy. Oxytocin is the neurotransmitter that we secrete when we are in love and when we have plenty of family around us. And serotonin, the neurotransmitter that make you sleep and relax. So we call that the happy chemical. And in stress out, or when we get rewarded, dopamine is the first neurotransmitter that come to us when we eat and when we have intimacy. Dopamine is what we call the reward hormone. This is why we like to eat. So we're gonna find what is the relation between stress and addiction. And that's why a lot of physicians become addict. Addiction is part of our society. There is plenty of addict people here. What happens when you have stress? When you have stress, there is a place in the brain, inside the ventral of the brain called nucleus accumbens. And this is other troublemaker in the brain. When you are stressed out, it becomes very thirsty for dopamine. So normal dopamine will not do anything here. You need more dopamine. So what happens in stress, for example here, when we eat, when we have food, dopamine increase in the nucleus accumbens. When we smoke or use amphetamine, also dopamine increase. Look at dopamine here, 1,000 here, food, 200. That's why this substance is very, very addictive. We call that ketoconine here inside. Very, very addictive drugs. Why? Because it raises dopamine 10 times more than regular God wants us to have dopamine. So what happens when you are stressed? What is the relation between stress and addiction here? So when we are stressed out, instead of craving strawberry or cucumber, you crave this. So remember, next time when you are on call, and all of you are going to be on call at some point, I hope, the next morning, because you did not sleep well and because you have very night stress, you're going to crave this. And that's going to make you eventually fat. So when you see a physician who is fat, that means he had a lot of stress and he was trying to cope with it with this, instead of coping with this here or here. So you always, to prevent yourself in the future from gaining weight because of the stress, because the stress is going to make you crave food or alcohol or drugs or smoking, one of these, or all of them. So instead of craving those, I think craving those are good, but craving other things is not good. You have to have hobbies. So always, as a medical student, make sure you have hobbies. If you don't have hobbies, you're going to be in trouble. Make sure you have good family connection. Very important. Because this is what's going to raise your dopamine. This is going to raise your dopamine. Of course, in Riyadh, we don't have this here, but at least we have something else. So this guy this is his stress relief. Because dopamine is low, and he's going to raise his dopamine with this giant hamburger. And this is the lady who was what you call emotional eater. So she is very stressed out, kids, medical school, chips, cat. All of this make her so hungry. So we call that emotional eater. That means when I get stressed out, I go to the fridge and start munching on those chips and cake and food. So weight gain is a product of stress. So when you notice in the future that you start eating too much, that means you are not dealing with your stress as much as you're supposed to. Some people might lose their appetite during stress. So there is 10-20% of people who will have the opposite, which is also not good, but is not as bad as this one. What is the complexity, especially for the female? The female, when they gain weight, is different than the male. Why? Because in our society, and I think in every society, it's not our society only, the female is mainly looked at by the male as her features here. While the female is more pragmatic, she looks at the frontal lobe of the male. She wants the accomplishment of the male. The male doesn't care much about the accomplishment. He cares about this only. He just cares about the feature of that woman. But the female is more likely to, and that's what the lady in a very disadvantaged compared with male. Because when a lady gains weight, she will have low self-esteem. When she had low self-esteem, she becomes more depressed. When she is more depressed, she's going to eat and compensate, and she gets in a vicious cycle. So this is where you really need to prevent that from happening by dealing with the stress, as we say. What happened when we are stressed? I remember when I was stressed out, the max was 2007, 2008. I was having too many hands, professor at the university and having busy clinic and a lot of other things. So I used to go on vacation. I didn't feel anything. You go and take him to Disneyland, you take him to Paris, he doesn't feel any pleasure. So one of the symptoms of stress out is you cannot enjoy anything that you usually enjoy. Why? Because when we said happiness is when you have too much dopamine, right? So dopamine goes up in happiness. Anything goes up has to go down. So what happened, which bring dopamine down? CRH or CRH. CRH or CRHF is the stress hormone. So stress hormone is what brings dopamine down. When dopamine is down, you don't enjoy anything. Your kids do well in school, indifference. You have job promotion, you don't feel anything. You go on vacation, you don't feel anything. Why? Because stress does not make you enjoy anything. So stress is the enemy of dopamine, okay? What is the enemy of dopamine? It's CRH. Let's see if your life is very stressful. What's going to happen to your dopamine? It's going to be low, right? If your dopamine is low, you cannot enjoy anything. And let's go back to Dr. Z. And this is, I always mention it in all the talk, because this is a very dear friend of mine, who was my friend 20 years ago. Dr. Z had very successful practice. He's very good doctor, smart, and made a lot of money. So, but his work is very stressful. He's making a lot of money, but stress at work is so bad. That means his dopamine is what at work is low, right? When you are stressful at work, your dopamine is low. At 4 o'clock you go home, your wife and kids supposed to raise your dopamine. So you have a smiling wife who will hug you and cook for you and make you relax and raise your dopamine again. This is what Dr. Z expects in the marriage. In reality, no, this is what happened. His wife is depressed. His wife is not engaged. She is very cold, mother we call her. So he goes home. At work, dopamine is low. Nothing. Goes home, dopamine is even lower. Dr. Z is in big trouble. No dopamine here, no dopamine here. That's why in America they call that happy hour. So at 4 o'clock, instead of going at home, most people go to the bar and drink some alcohol to raise the dopamine, and they go home. A lot of people do it because they know that a lot of doctors are stressed out and a lot of workers are stressed out. So you don't want to be like this. When you get married, if you are a doctor, and same thing for female. If you are a female and have a stressful job, you need to educate your husband. If you are a male and you have a stressful job, you need to educate your wife. Tell her, look, my dear wife, I have very low dopamine at work. I deal with surgery, I deal with patient, and I'm stressed to the max. When I come home, I want you to raise my dopamine. And of course, you have to be nice to her to raise your dopamine. If you are not nice to her, she will not raise your dopamine. She will just break your neck. So prevention is always, as a physician, male and female, choose your spouse wisely. So you need to make sure that she is vivacious, she is very interactive, and he is good personality that he will, this is you when you go home. How do we know that your dopamine is low? That means you are stressed out. Lack of motivation. You don't want to do anything. Remember, it's like Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is no dopamine. Remember, in Parkinson's, you have a massive face, way, and you walk like this and you have a tremor. You don't have any facial expression. Dopamine is what gives you the facial expression. So you look at a stressful person, he is like a piece of furniture, no emotion, no interaction. We call it no zip in life, no emotion in his face. No vivacious. Vivacious is the lady who is very high facial expression. This is all dopamine. Procrastination means ta'jeel. Get tired easily, low libido, sleep problem, mood swing and irritability. Remember, when you are on call, post-call, the next morning you're going to be so irritable. Why? Because you did not have any dopamine. Sleep is where we refill our dopamine. So the patient who had mood swing and irritability, that's mean they did not have any dopamine and they didn't sleep well last night. We call that in medical term burnout. So burnout is you are unable to do anything at work. How I can deal with it? First, they said here, be grateful for what you have. So always think, don't let the negative thought come to your mind. So always think, okay, at least I can walk, I have good health, I have money, I have good job, I'm a doctor. So always remember that you have something nobody else has. So this is very good. If your life give you lemon, make lemonade. So don't be stuck, I am in Riyadh, I cannot do anything. For example, if you are in Colorado, you're going to enjoy climbing the trees and climbing the mountain and do outdoor activities. In Riyadh, just enjoy the camel ride. Just, this is what you can do. So if life give you lemon, make lemonade. Take a deep breath. Why? So I remember 2007, this is, we said, the most stressful year in my life. And I was so stressful. The company I work with brought me a guy who used to teach me how to breathe. So he will spend half an hour every week with me, just give me breathing lessons. So he will say, okay, Dr. Ali, breathe deeply, hold, zephyr. So for an hour or half an hour every week, they pay him a lot of money just to do that, to train me. I don't know why. But what happened when you take a deep breath, and he always give me this advice, please always train yourself to take a deep breath. Remember, this is a troublemaker. We said the amygdala and the limbic system. And this is the frontal lobe. When we are stressed out, we are not using the frontal lobe. We are using this. Why? Because when you are stressed, the blood always goes to the most important part of the brain, the limbic system, because limbic system is the most vital part of the brain, the older brain. So this is where the blood goes and the oxygen goes. When you take a deep breath, you move the energy and the blood and the oxygen to the frontal lobe, and then you engage the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the logical part of the brain. This is the brain that make you make good decisions. Remember, the amygdala and limbic system is the emergency brain. It's not the brain that you should use on daily day. This you need to use only when you are in love and when you are chased by a lion. But not in dealing with regular life days. Most of us will keep using this because this is the old brain and the brain we get used to know how to use. We don't know how to use this one. So in psychotherapy, that's why psychotherapy is very important. We teach patient how to use this brain because he is not using it. This is the most peaceful, beautiful part of the brain that God gave us, and we don't know how to use it. Some people will never use it actually, we just use this one. So by deep breathing, we try to engage this part of the brain here. So deep breathing will lower your heart rate, will lower your agitation, and will make you use the logical part of the brain. Because the frontal lobe does not make decisions quickly. He will balance things and teach you how to do it. Second, this is a problem in our, what you call the Middle East Arabic culture. Khalas? 5 minutes, okay. So we are not assertive. And a lot of my patients, the best thing I can teach them is to be assertive. Assertive means how to say no. And most of us will shy and malish and mashiha. So we need to teach him how to be assertive. Can you take an extra call? No, I can't. Please don't ask me this again. Can I borrow money from you? No, you can't. I have money, but I'm not going to give it to you. So we call that assertive. Try to make a list. Try to give job away to different people who work under you. Try not to think ahead of time, write a schedule about what you want to do every day. So there's a lot of technique, but we don't have time for it now. Maybe we'll do a plan, stress number 2 session we'll do about that. Then, this is very, very important. When you see somebody stressed out or anxious, look for what is the unmet need in these people. What do I mean by the unmet need? Unmet need, a lot of us, we feel stressed out when we are missing something very important in our life. Intimacy, being secure and safe. And this is very, very important. If these are not met, you're going to be stressed out and anxious. And this will be my final slide. I want you to look at this and keep it in mind. Take a picture of it and go look for it. It's called the Maslow Hierarchy of Need. When this is not met, we're going to feel so anxious and so depressed. We're going to feel empty. The patient will tell you. So you have a case scenario where a patient or a doctor who is highly accomplished. He is bored in too many specialties. Very well-known psychiatrist or physician, very accomplished in research, very well-known, have many prizes, but he is not having anything here. So all of his accomplishment is here because self-actualization, that means this is your accomplishment. But you don't have anything here. Like Dr. Z, he is very rich, had too many, board, but this was missing. So he's miserable. Although you look at him, he must be very happy. He had 2 Mercedes, not 1. He had beautiful home, a lot of money, travel first class all the time. But he's miserable. Why? Because this part is not filled. So you need to fill this one, which we call food and shelter. safety, money, and feeling safe at home, and then intimacy and love. If one of these is not met, doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean anything. You have a lot of money, cars, villas, whatever. But here, so you see what is missing here. If this one missing, then you feel empty. Anything you do here is not going to be it's going to be meaningless. And the final slide, should I do it or not? Physicians are very bad. Physicians are bad parents. Physicians are not good parents. Why? Because we don't have any training. This is the final slide. We don't have any training in our limbic system. Our limbic system is very untrained. We all spend all of our time reading textbook. Our cortex is huge. So this is the thinking part. But our dealing with love and emotion is very small because we don't deal with people. We are dealing with textbook. And that's why we need to train physicians how to deal with the emotional part of that. One of my teachers, this is the final slide, he had 4 boards in specialties. He is one of the most researcher in the world, probably. And he is textbook walking. At the same time, he doesn't know how to deal with his wife or his kids. He is so miserable husband and so miserable father. Why? Because he doesn't know anything about emotion. All of his life is textbook. Thank you very much. Do I have to wait? Thank you for the question. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum. Doctor, you said we need to develop the BFC for us to manage stress. Is there an age at which the neurons won't be able to develop?
Yeah, it used to be, we thought in the past that the brain does not grow. No, we found out that a lot of area of the brain keep growing, especially the hippocampus and the frontal lobe. We always make new cells there. And the best time to make new cells there is sleeping at night. So one of the things stress out patients is they don't sleep well. So one of the best advice is tell them to sleep at night because this is one of the way that the brain grow and make new cells. So it's never too late. You always have to do what we call psychotherapy to train them how to do that later on. But one of the area of problem they face always is the sleep. So if you fix their sleep, they will do well. Yes.
Thank you very much for a very nice presentation. Hani Tamim, Epidemiology Biostatistics Professor, just joined us recently in Faisal. I wish I attended some.
Okay.
So my question, is it too late for me?
No, it's never too late. It's going to take a little bit more time, but it's always can happen anytime. So what we do is, when we do psychotherapy, is how to let this part of the brain control this. And we call that CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. This is what is the best treatment for that. Yes. Thank you.